And who in all the earth, as I said before, is more self-sacrificing than God? He gave his only son as a sacrifice that we might live. And so God's love is the embodiment or the fullness of sacrifice. And of course, brothers and sisters, without going into further detail there, we know where this is going. The love that we are called to love each other with is also a self-sacrificing love. If God has loved us this way and then commands us to love each other this way, then we are to love each other more than we love ourselves. We are to love each other and put each other first, even to the point where it may cost us something. It may cost us very, very many things, actually. It may cost us our time, it may cost us our money, it may cost us other resources. But as we'll look at this morning, it will cost us one thing that this flesh holds more dear than anything else, and that's our pride. Self-sacrificing love will cost us our pride. Now, giving up our pride, that's not really that's not really a cost. I mean, if you really think about it, that's a good thing that we give up our pride. But our flesh loves ourselves so much that it comes at a great cost to our flesh. And actually, it's why so many people have a difficult time loving in a self-sacrificial way. Because we love ourselves more than we love other people generally. And we think more highly of ourselves generally than we do other people. And so this morning we want to begin to flip that around and begin to look at these things that are self-sacrificing about love in greater detail. Because that big problem in the heart of mankind, that pride, that self-sacrifice, it doesn't come natural to us. And that's the real issue here with agape love. It does not come natural. So every single week, if you've learned something and your mind's been blown a little bit or you've been challenged, that's okay. It should be that way because this love is not normal. The world doesn't operate in this love. It doesn't understand this love. It doesn't practice this love. But Christians are called to practice this love. And so each and every week, as you think about your love, you should see that it falls far short of the agape love that we're called to, but you should also see this love growing in your life as well. God calls us to be humble, but our flesh compels us to be prideful, right? It's the age-old battle. We've got the spirit within us that wishes to do good and to follow the Lord, and we've got the flesh within us that seeks to break the law of the Lord. Our flesh compels us to be prideful, but God calls us, through the Holy Spirit, to act in humility. And we looked at that actually at the beginning of Romans chapter 12. We looked at that. We are called to be humble. It's one of the very first things as Christians. Actually, you can't come to Christ without humility, because without humility, you'll never repent. And without repentance, we know the Scripture says we cannot be saved. So pride is born out of self-love primarily. Now, I know we've covered that topic of self-love in great detail over the past few weeks. We are going to talk about it a little bit this morning because you can't talk about a self-sacrificing love without giving the antithesis to that, which is self-love. And so we will be talking a little bit about self-love this morning. But pride is far more dangerous, I think, than maybe we fully understand. Now, I think probably all of us have a grasp on pride and how dangerous it can be. But throughout history, pride has been recognized as the deadliest of sins. The deadliest of sins. It is even said that pride itself is the avenue to all other sins you could ever commit. Pride is where it begins. King Solomon wrote on the trappings of pride in self-love in Proverbs, actually in great detail. You can read roughly the first 20 chapters, and it's dealing with, to some degree, pride in the hearts of men. Pride is dangerous. Augustine and Thomas Aquinas both warned of pride. They actually wrote it was the greatest vice in the life of a Christian was pride. And that's pretty remarkable to think about. All the vices there are in the world, all the things all the sin you could be caught up into. And Augustine and Thomas Aquinas both wrote that pride was the greatest vice, because they knew that pride led to all their sins. Great men like Jonathan Edwards, John Stott, C.S. Lewis, all wrote that pride is the greatest enemy. Listen, and this is important, not just individually of a Christian, but actually in the life of the church. In the life of the church. John Stott actually wrote, if you wanted to destroy a church very quickly, add pride to the mix. Add pride to the mix, and it will disintegrate, it will crumble. But of course, something has happened. We live in a culture now, and we know this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but we live in a culture that celebrates pride, celebrates self-love. The Bible tells us that the more we love God and others, the healthier we are, The healthier we are spiritually, the healthier we are in our families, the healthier we are as a church. And yet this culture teaches that the more we love ourselves, the healthier we are. So you see the difference? God says the more we love others, the healthier we are. This culture says the more we love ourselves, the healthier we are. And pride and arrogance are not just prevalent among the rich or the powerful or the successful or the famous or even these religious leaders, well-known and unknown alike. Brothers and sisters, pride is a snake that rears its head in the lives of every single human being. No matter how much they have to be prideful over or how little they have to boast over or how much they have to boast over. Human beings have to deal with pride to one degree or another. And so, unfortunately, I think to some degree, and I know myself growing up in the public school system, I was told all the time about self-love and how to love myself and how to think highly of myself and have self-worth and all these things. And so I know for years I even had to struggle with that. Well, what's the truth? Well, the Bible tells us the truth. That stuff is unbiblical, ungodly. We need to throw it away. So even in our own lives, perhaps maybe pride or self-love or this self-esteem has creeped into our lives a little more than it should. And I hope today you'll see how we can't function as individuals or as a church if pride is a part of our lives in any way. Because the American culture really revolves around the power of the individual. You think about that in American culture, right? Isn't the individual the all-powerful being in American culture? We love the individual success story. We love when we fall down, we can pick ourselves up by our bootstraps. We love the opportunity this culture gives us. And the power of the individual has really taken front and center in this culture that we live in. And so what's happened, I think we become a self-serving people. We seek to protect ourselves often first, provide for ourselves first, exalt ourselves first. And think about this. Isn't this so true about the American culture? We want what we want, when we want it, how we want it. And you know what? We want it now, don't we? We want it now. You know where I was going, Chris, because this I just described you to a T, right? So I described probably all of us to some degree, didn't I? I mean, if we're honest. We've come to expect that. I mean, we want everything. And here's the thing. In this culture, it's at our fingertips to some degree. To some degree or another, we can truly desire things, put ourselves in front, and acquire those things for ourselves before we take care of anyone else. Before we do anything for anyone else. We have that ability in this culture. Brothers and sisters, we need to start looking at others primarily, is really what I want to kind of drive home as we look at 1 Corinthians 13 this morning. God tells us that we are to operate in a way that is the opposite of self-love and self-esteem. Actually, we read this a few weeks ago, but I do want to look at it again because I think it's very important. Mark 12:28 through 31. They're challenging Jesus. They're trying to trap him here and try to catch him in speaking against the Bible, speaking against the truth of God's word. That's what they're doing. And so one of the scribes came and heard them arguing, and recognizing that he, that's Jesus, had answered them all well, asked him, "What commandment is the foremost of all?" And Jesus answered, "The foremost is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these." Now, Jesus doesn't tell us if anything comes next, right? We would say, well, myself, I come third, right? Isn't that the Boy Scout motto, like God first, family, and then myself? The Bible doesn't even give us that option. Do you notice that? Look what Jesus says. There's no other commandment greater than these. There's nothing else you need to know, you guys. There's nothing else you need to know. Love God first, love others. That's it. I don't believe there's a third. There was I think a few years ago, and I understand their meaning in this, but there was like a Christian movement, and it was called I'm Third. I'm third. Well, there is no third. According to the scriptures, we have first place and second place, God and then others. And Jesus himself doesn't give us ourselves to love as even a third option. Now think about that for a moment. We're not even given that as a third option anywhere in the scriptures. We're to love God and love others. God takes care of the rest in our lives when we do that. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. And when we're loving God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and we're loving others, is there any room left for love for ourselves? I think that's really where we're going here with this. Because self-love is a very dangerous fire, and you will burn your relationships down, and you will burn, not just with the Lord, but with the body of Christ and with family, if self-love is what's important to you. Because self-love damages our walk with God and greatly affects how we love one another. And so this is what I want to discuss today. Last week we looked at the steadfastness of love, the unchangeability, the immutability, so to speak, of love. This week we're going to look at the self-sacrificing aspect of agape love, or agape, however you'd like to pronounce it. And so we're going to look at these few things this morning. Agape, or agape, is self-sacrificing. And I've broken it down with these 4 headings. It is not jealous. It does not brag. It is not arrogant. And does not seek its own. Now, if you have your bulletin, you'll notice I've given you headings for all 4 of these. And I came across this quote, and I don't know who it is, actually. It's an unknown quote, but I thought it was really good to describe self-sacrificing love and kind of where we're going. Perfect love, that's agape, this perfect love shown by God. Agape gives at the expense of self for the benefit of other. Have you ever thought about love that way? It's going to cost you something. It's an expense to you. It's a sacrifice to you. Perfect love gives at the expense, at the sacrifice of me, so that others would benefit. Now, when I say it that way, I know probably all of us say, yeah, I want that to be me. I want that to describe me. But I wonder how often it actually does describe us. So let's look at this set of phrases from 1 Corinthians 13 this morning, and let's look at the first one. It says this: love is not jealous. Love is not jealous. Now, I'm sure all of us understand that being jealous of another person is not a desirable godly trait. I don't think I have to convince us of that. And so I'm not going to try to do that. I'm not going to try to convince you of something you already know. If we're running around being jealous of people and what they have and who they are and maybe the talents they've been given or the lifestyle or various things like that, we know that's not a godly trait. But I want us to understand something even deeper about jealousy, our expression of agape towards other people. It's not so much about a lack of something. It's not so much about a lack of something. So it's not okay just to not be jealous. Love is to be acted out. Actually, agape is a verb. It's a literal verb. It's an action word. It means we have to do something. So we're actually not taking action if we're simply just not jealous. There has to be an action to this non-jealousy that we have. And I want to look at that this morning. Because agape is an outward expression of love. It's not just simply not being jealous. It actually contains far more than that. It's not good enough to simply not be jealous towards a brother and sister in Christ. If you're not jealous, then that's good. You shouldn't be. But how would you show your brother and sister in Christ that you're not jealous? That is what's important. That's what I want to focus on this morning. How do we show that we're not jealous? Because love does require action. A lack of something is not agape. It's an addition. It's showing. The heart of agape is about expression of love to God and to one another. And so as we've been doing over the past few weeks, let's look at God's expression of love towards us to better understand what God is teaching us here. You see, God gives freely to those who ask. That's what the Bible says. God gives freely to those who ask. He never withholds. He never becomes jealous when his children excel at their spiritual gift, or he never becomes jealous at their successes. He delights when we increase in our faith. He delights when we're using our spiritual gifts to build his kingdom. He rejoices at the success of his children. Now, what I mean by success is I mean our spiritual success, our spiritual growth. God rejoices when we are following him in obedience. And whatever good thing, Jesus even says, whatever good thing you ask for from God, the Father will give freely, and not only freely, but lavishly. Lavishly. Let's take a look at God's expression of love towards us from the scriptures. James 1:5 says this: "But if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, and he gives to all generously without reproach, and it will be given to him." It will be given to him. So this is a way that God demonstrates his love towards us as Christians. We ask for wisdom and he gives it. Gives it generously. Matthew 7:11 says this: "If then," and I love this, "being evil," so if you guys are evil is what Jesus is saying, "and yet you know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give what is good to those who ask him? You are evil and you like to give good things to your children. The Father in heaven is perfect. How much more will he give if you ask him for what is good and what is noble? You see, love not being jealous is far more than simply resisting the urge to become upset, envious, or covetous of another person's good fortune. No, we need to be that. We need to not be jealous of those things. Brothers and sisters, to not be jealous, it goes one step further. We rejoice along with them. We rejoice along with them in their good fortunes. That's what it means to actively not be jealous. Love is not grieved or jealous when others grow in their spiritual gifts, when somebody else's ministry perhaps explodes or grows. If someone is given maybe a high position in their job or in the church or any other places, love is not upset when someone else prospers maybe financially or prospers spiritually or prospers in their family. Brothers and sisters, when these things happen, as we actively live in a way that is not jealous, we will rejoice along with them. We will congratulate along with them. Our hearts will be filled with joy just as their hearts are filled with joy. But it's even more than this. Love gives freely in these moments. Freely in these moments. It doesn't hold back. It's so easy, I think, sometimes to kind of play the game. When somebody gets something that you really want, how many of you have ever known somebody else that's got something that you really wanted that thing, but they got it? Love gives freely in that moment. It doesn't hold on to jealousy in the inward parts, but in the outward, play the part like we know how to. It gives freely from the heart. Love, joy, and satisfaction at the prosperity of others. And I'm not just talking about financial prosperity. I think when we hear that word far too often, we just think about financial prosperity. That's not what I'm talking about here. There are multiple ways to prosper in this life and in our Christian walk. I'm talking about all of them. And so my question then is this: is it true of you that when somebody gets something that maybe you've even really wanted or been praying for a long time, when they get that thing, you hold nothing back as you rejoice at their prosperity, as you praise God for their good fortune? I think that's a good question to ask ourselves. Is that true of us? Does it bring you joy when someone experiences God's favor in any way, even if you desired that thing for yourself? If not, then very simply, you're not, or I wouldn't be practicing love the way God has called us to. Simply not being jealous, simply an absence of jealous behavior is not the call here. It is an active, outward rejoicing with the good fortunes of other people. It gives freely in those moments. Now, for a moment, if you have children, think of your own children. Don't we want to see our children grow in wisdom and in knowledge and in all these godly things? I mean, I say this often, and I mean this. I want my kids to excel far past what the Lord brought me to in my life. Far past. Don't we want our children even to surpass everyone else we know in the service of God? I know I do. Not so that I can boast in them, so that they can grab a hold of God's obediences and favor far more than I ever did. And so you think about our kids. I hope you would understand that. I hope this is your sentiment, that when your kids prosper, it brings you much joy, it brings you much gratitude and much satisfaction. Now, agape love has this same level of satisfaction in the fortunes of not just our own children, but of other people, of all people. If we are loving God and God's people in the right way, then the blessings that others receive should only actually add to our joy. Think about that. Do the blessings of other people that you know add to your joy, or does it take away from your joy? It's probably the best test you can come up with to see if you're really loving this way, if you're really loving in a way that is not jealous. And when somebody else grows in any way, does it add to your joy as a fellow brother and sister in Christ, or does it take away? If you decide right now to pray for and to hope for every professing believer that they would experience God's lavish prosperity in their lives, even the ones maybe that have hurt you or offended you, then I'll say this: their prosperity won't make you jealous. Their prosperity won't cause you to be covetous in any way. It will only bring you joy. And I think that's probably the best way to describe our jealousy or not being jealous. Even the people that maybe you've had a less than savory relationship with before. When they prosper, does it bring you joy? Because it should. It ought to. It ought to bring us joy. Because if we love each other this way, then in the end, even the prosperity of others, even perhaps our enemies, will edify us, will build us up. We will see the working in the hand of God in other people's lives. And I don't care who those people are. If God is working and bringing prosperity, spiritual prosperity, or prosperity in any type in another person's life, that ought to bring us as fellow Christians great joy to see God moving and see God working. Amen? That's the whole point here. And that's the power of true love, a true love that is not jealous. It never drags us down. It never brings about a covetous attitude or behavior. And so if you find yourself becoming envious or jealous or upset at the good fortunes of others, then I would say that's a telltale sign that you're not practicing agape in the way that we're commanded to. And so that's the first thing that we want to look at this morning and understand. Love is not jealous. Is that statement true of you this morning? Love is not jealous. Let's look at the next one. Now, I added these ones together here this morning in your bulletins. I separated them, but we're going to talk about them separately because these things actually are very related. Love does not brag and is not arrogant. Love does not brag and is not arrogant. Like I said, these words are actually very closely related. And literally in the Greek, they mean they're not puffed up, they're not bloated, right? They're not puffed up and bloated. It is not bloated with what? Self-love. Again, the opposite of agape love is a self-satisfying love. And so love does not brag and it is not arrogant of self, of what I've accomplished or what I've been given in my life. True love does not love self or care for self over others. And this is where you can see how love has to be self-sacrificing. Love does not seek to elevate one's own accomplishments, wisdoms, giftings, or anything else over another. And probably all of us have been around people like that, right? Where they cannot wait for you to get done talking so they can tell you what they've done. Or maybe a story that happened to them in their life, right? Probably all of us have been in situations like that. We've probably been the one doing that. I can't wait till they get done so I can tell my story, right? We don't want to be that way. Philippians 2:3-4 says this: Do nothing from selfish or empty conceit. Conceitedness is another related word for bragging and arrogance. But rather with humility of mind. Listen to this, church. How many of us, I really wonder, and this is a tough one, but how many of us truly do this? Regard other people as more important than yourselves. I mean, just that right there, isn't it? Man, I think about that. I thought about that this week. How many of us truly do that? Regard other people as more deserving, more important than even ourselves. Do not merely look out for your own personal interests. Of course, we have to take care of ourselves, but also for the interests of others. You see, the twofold problem with bragging is not only that it seeks to elevate oneself, which is a problem, but the second part of that problem, what does it do to the other people? It puts them down. It tramples them. So when you're bragging, when you're arrogant, when you're speaking high of yourself, not only are you trying to elevate yourself in the eyes of people, but you're also putting the other person down at the same time. It's a twofold problem. And so this really comes down to a simple question, I think. Who do we honor more? Who do we honor more? The one who is arrogant honors himself more. The one who is humble honors others more. Pretty simple, pretty black and white. Hard to do, I get it. But in its explanation, it's fairly simple. An arrogant man or woman has very little patience for the fault of others. And I think this is probably how you will see an arrogant person manifest their arrogance most readily. Arrogant people who think very highly of themselves, have very little patience for the faults of others. Now, I'm going to be quite honest with you. I've struggled with this for a long time, and I've had to take step backs and say, why am I so impatient sometimes? It's because I think I can do it better. That's why. That's why I'm impatient. I can do it better. I can do it more complete. I can do it in a way that is going to bring a higher level of satisfaction to whatever the issue is. So arrogance, I think, is very often seen in a lack of patience for the faults of other people. Often people who are arrogant are the quickest to point out the faults of others, the quickest to give up on others. How true is that? But listen, they're often the slowest to come to repentance themselves. And arrogance, of course, will always do that. It's easy to see the faults of others, but man, it's hard to see my own. It's hard to see my own. That is why being puffed up or bloated with self-honor, self-love is so dangerous. And I know we know how dangerous it is, church. But a true agape love does the opposite of that. It holds others in higher esteem than you hold yourself. I saw this week as well, and I just thought this was so perfect. True love sees the strengths and qualities in others and rejoices in them. I see the strengths and quality in you, and I rejoice in them. And not only do I rejoice in them, I encourage you in them. And instead of pointing to myself all the time, I point to you. I build you up. I try to edify you so that you can thrive, that you can grow. Perhaps in a way that maybe I never will. And yet rejoice in that all along. But just as important, true love also sees the weaknesses of others. And I think this is another way where this plays out very importantly. We see the weaknesses in others. And instead of becoming disillusioned and disgusted with them, we seek to build them up and encourage them. Because let's be honest, all of us have weaknesses, right? And a lot of our weaknesses are readily seen. A lot of us wear our weaknesses right on our sleeves, right? We know our weaknesses, and probably some of you know my weaknesses, and I know some of your weaknesses. But we don't seek to exploit that weakness. We seek to help you through that weakness, to build you up. So I hope you understand the second part of that. To walk with that brother, to help them through whatever weakness they're struggling with. And so, brothers and sisters, a true love that does not brag and is not arrogant rejoices in the strengths of other people and encourages in the weaknesses of other people. Do you see the twofold part here? Do you see why love is an expression? It's an action. We can't just simply not be arrogant and hold that to ourselves. We have to express that non-arrogance through two ways. We rejoice in the strengths of others, and we help and encourage through their weaknesses. That is what a person who truly is not arrogant, that's how they will treat their brothers and sisters in Christ. And yet the proud have no patience for this type of love. They see themselves as more spiritual perhaps, more mature, godlier than others, especially when perceived trials or even real trials come into their life, right? They become the source, basically the center of the universe. People who are arrogant do that. When a trial comes in their life, they only can think about themselves. It's all they think about. It consumes them. And they lose completely the understanding that even in times of difficulty, we are to love others and we are to serve others even when we need served ourselves. And so, brothers and sisters, what happens is, if you think you're godlier, if you think you're more mature, if you think you're just more spiritual than most people, then most people eventually will become a source of annoyance to you. They will just annoy you because they're not on par with you. And boy, I am just this wonderful thing. And so if they're not on par with me, then I don't have any patience for them. I don't have any patience. Often people who are arrogant seek to tear others down, either by a great disturbance or by selective slander, or in order to puff themselves up in the eyes of others. And what I mean by selective slander is you know what to say to somebody about another person in a certain situation. I know if I say this to this person right now about this other person, I'm gonna get better inroads with this person. I know how to play to perhaps some of their issues that they have with this person. And so I'll slander to this person, I'll slander to this person, I'll slander in these certain ways. And sometimes that's called manipulation. But I just call it slander because that's what it is. Whenever we're speaking ill about somebody else in a way that seeks to puff ourselves up or to look better in the eyes of somebody else, it's slander. It's slander. God's word tells us very plainly that love does not brag and it is not arrogant. But the question is not simply are you or are you not a bragging, arrogant type person outwardly? The question is, do you actively seek to honor others above yourself? Do you actively seek to build others up and think of them more highly than you think of yourself? Are you very, very ready and does encouragement flow freely from your lips? I know some people, it's hard to give a compliment to them. It's hard. I think it's just my own brother, right? It's hard to give your own brother a really good compliment. Because there's just, I don't know, what is it, Joel? There's just stuff there. Sometimes we're thinking it all the time, but we don't say it because maybe he'll gain an upper hand. I don't know. I'm just using Joel as an example because I'm so close to him. But why wouldn't I be so ready to tell him, man, you did a great job, or man, you do so good at these certain things that I'm not as good at. Do you see what there's always people that it's easy to encourage. I'm talking about the people that you find it hard to encourage. Those are the ones this week you need to step out a little bit more boldness and say those things that you've been thinking that you know, but you have just never said to them. Love is not arrogant. And if we're not giving people the encouragement that they need, then if we're withholding that in any way, I think that's a sign of arrogance. Do you actively hope and pray and encourage so that others would be placed in a seat of honor, even perhaps before yourself? Now, that's a question that probably some of us need to wrestle with. How good of an encourager are you? I'm not just talking about to the people that you find it easy to encourage. I'm talking about everybody. How good of an encourager are you? Because I think at the heart of somebody who practices this outwardly, who's not arrogant, they are very free to give and give and gives in order to build other people up. They love freely. Because love brings encouragement and vibrancy to the life of those around you. While arrogance will often bring contempt, and ultimately it will greatly hinder God's ability to work within the individual, and of course, when that happens, within the body of Christ in general. If we have a bunch of arrogant people running around this church, the work that we're called to do as a church is going to be greatly hindered. Because everyone's going to want it for themselves and be arguing and fighting with ambition as opposed to seeking to expand the kingdom of God. Very dangerous. Very dangerous. And so let's move on. Love does not seek its own. Now, obviously, I think you can see a pattern here in how these things fall into that love is self-sacrificing. And so we come to this final phrase that we're going to look at this morning, that we're going to examine. And again, it's related to the others because it falls under this self-sacrificing category. But there's a distinct difference here in the behavior that God is trying to warn us against when he tells us that love does not seek its own. There is a distinct warning here. Really what God is warning us against is selfish lust of the flesh. Serving this flesh that so wants to be fed. Now, lust is more often, I think, used and associated in the context of sexual desire, which it definitely, of course, includes that. But what it is, lust in its most basest form, it's using other people to satisfy self. Now, that can be sexually or with their money or maybe with their possessions or various things. You use other people to satisfy your own self. And brothers and sisters, of course, that is the definition of what agape is not, right? Where we use other people, we manipulate them, we use what they have so that I can satisfy and I can gratify, that I can seek what you have to satisfy myself. That's really what God is warning against here. It does not lustfully seek to use other people to satisfy yourself. But lust encompasses, like I said, not just sexual desire. It includes everything that we do that seeks to satisfy ourselves, at the expense of another person. When our flesh lusts for something, often, and many of you know this, you've seen sin work this way in your life, you will stop at nothing to acquire that thing that brings satisfaction to the lust of your flesh. Lust is all about serving self at the cost of another person, regardless of the cost of the other person, actually. And like I said, if you've ever lusted over something so greatly that you went to any lengths, even lying, stealing, cheating, whatever you could to get that thing, then you are not loving with this agape love because you're seeking to serve yourself. You're seeking your own. Someone who seeks their own satisfaction, like I said, they'll lie, they'll slander, they'll gossip, they'll cheat, they'll use, they will murder, they'll abuse, they'll manipulate, or any other manner of evil to gain the thing that their heart desires for themselves. To the lustful, another person, the sexually lustful, another person becomes their means to a selfish end. They place their own well-being and their own desires above the well-being of the person they're lusting over. And that's why agape is an utter enemy of seeking its own. Now let me say this. It is godly and right to take care of your own body and mind. I'm not saying that, okay? And that's not what this is saying either. It doesn't mean you just eat whatever you want and you have heart problems and all these various things, right? It's not saying that you don't take care of the body as a temple. That's a very, very important part too. It's a good thing to treat our bodies as a temple of God, to exercise spiritually and physically and mentally and read the Word of God and grow in our spiritual disciplines, okay? This doesn't say that we just let our bodies go to pot and not take care of them. What the Holy Spirit is warning us against here is that we should never take care of ourselves at the expense of another person. He's saying never love the desire for your own praise. Never love the desire for your own honor. Never love the desire for your own profit or your own pleasure at the expense of another person. If what we desire costs another person something, then it is the opposite of self-sacrificing, because love is supposed to cost us something, right? Not the other person something. And lust always costs someone else something. Always. And so our lust, or our seeking for our own satisfaction, satisfying our own interests, brothers and sisters, probably if you thought about it hard enough, you could think of a time where you acted in that way and it costed someone else tremendously. Tremendously. It'll often cost a person their dignity, their hope, their peace, their joy, many other things. You see, the person who loves with agape love not only resists the temptation to use others for their purposes, they actually prefer the welfare and the satisfaction of the person above themselves. That's why these things are all connected. That's why this common thread of love is self-sacrificing runs through these four things we've looked at today. Again, agape love is action. And so, brothers and sisters, I guess the best way to think about this is, are you actively seeking for the good of other people in your lives? Not just the good of other people that you want to see succeed, right? Like your spouse maybe, or your children, but everybody in God's economy, everybody in the body of Christ. And so, brothers and sisters, this is an individual thing for sure. Individually, we want to see others excel. But I would say it goes even further. We want to see God's church excel, right? Above and beyond everything. If all the work that I put into to God's economy, all the work that I put in throughout my life, working and serving in ministry, if I never get a praise or accolade, but God's kingdom grows, that's all I want. I don't need to be put on a pedestal. I don't need to be this popular or powerful preacher that everybody looks to. All I need to do is what God has told me to do. And if God's kingdoms grows, then I say praise God. And we need to have that attitude about every aspect of our lives. Because love, agape love that is not self-sacrificing, ultimately seeks and loves God's will and purpose above all things. Above all things. And that's why you can see so many people throughout history, they didn't have concern for their own flesh. They were concerned about God's kingdom. And many people were put to death for the sake of God's kingdom. But to God be the glory. That was their only cry. That was their only call. And I wonder if that's our only call, ultimately. To God be the glory. Lord, use me in any way you see fit, because ultimately I just want to see people come to Christ. If I never get a single attaboy, right? Think of Jeremiah. I often say he had the hardest ministry of anybody in the scriptures, right? He prophesied for 40 years, and Israel doesn't listen to him a single time. Not once. Not once. He had one friend, Barak. Everyone else wanted to kill him, and they tried to many times, but by the hand of God, he was saved, right? I mean, what a hard ministry, and yet Jeremiah was faithful because he knew that God was using him for a purpose. He wasn't looking for the accolade of men, he was looking for the approval from God, for God's will to be done. And so we need to ask ourselves then, when we make any decision in order to bring satisfaction to ourselves, will that outcome build up God's people and his church, or will it bring it harm? We can apply that to individual relationships, and we can apply that corporately to the church of God. Now, we live, like I said, in a culture, there's no question, instant self-gratification is kind of our thing, right? Fast food exists because of instant self-gratification. We want something that tastes good, and we don't want to cook it ourselves, even though if we eat it every day, we're killing ourselves. We don't care. We just want it. Now it's easy, and so we're going to go get it. Right? If we're not happy, what do? We seek to usually buy something or get something that will make us happy. That's generally how things go in this culture. But the problem is when we seek our own, we leave a trail of broken, used, and hurt people in our wake. If we're arrogant, we will leave a trail of broken, used, and hurt people in our wake. If we are not self-sacrificing, there will always be a trail behind us of people that we have broken and hurt to gain satisfaction for ourselves. And so, brothers and sisters, your desire and my desire should never be placed above the well-being of others and the well-being of God's church. And man, I know how hard that is. I get it. I know it's hard. That's why I love self-sacrificing, right? It's sacrifice. It costs us something. I know you don't want to give your last $20 to your brother who needs it. You want this other thing. But you know what? Love self-sacrificing. I know you don't want to give up your time to go help somebody. But you know what? Love is self-sacrificing. I know there's a lot of things on any given day we don't want to give up. But before we make a decision, we need to ask ourselves, do I not want to give this thing up because I want it for myself? And if that's the case, then maybe we ought to rethink our motivation. Rethink our motivation by why we do things, or by the things we do or things we don't do. We need to rethink it. Because if self-love in any of these forms that we discussed today, if it's prevalent in your life, now of course I get it, we fall into sin from time to time. I guarantee every one of us is going to do one of these things from time to time. That's why we need the mercy and grace of God. But if this really sums up how you live, then you're only going to bring death and harm. And I don't maybe mean physical death, but you are going to kill relationships. Relationships will wither. They will be harmed in a way sometimes that you can't repair. Romans 12:3, which is really where we're at, brothers and sisters. I'm jumping back a little bit because I think this is important to look back at what Paul has already said. Romans 12:3 says this, "For through the grace given me, I say to everyone amongst you, to not think more highly of himself than he ought to think, but to think so as to have sound judgment, as God has allotted to each a measure of faith." Do not think about yourself more highly than you ought to, and I guarantee it will be the first steps towards living a love that is self-sacrificing. Think about this, church. Self-love is the same sin that drove Satan to rebel against God. It's the reason that God cast Satan from his presence forever. And left unchecked, it will have the same power in our lives. It will drive us away from God. It will drive a wedge between us and God. It will drive a wedge between us and God's people. And so, brothers and sisters, as we think about these things, how much self-love is actually prevalent in your life versus a self-sacrificing love? I think that's just a good question to ask before we close here. I'll say this, if there's even a small amount of self-love in our lives, it's too much. And so I want to challenge everybody here over this next week to think about that. Think about some of those things. And like I said, I was able to just get hit between the eyes this week with that. If I lose my patience with people, it's usually because I think I can do it better. And what an arrogant thing to think about. Because usually it's about everything. It's about foolish things. It's about things that don't even matter. I just think I can do it better. And we can't live that way. We're not going to grow in our love for one another if we're treating each other that way. So I know this week I have that to work on. I hope some of you can identify something in your life that we need to repent of, that we need to give to God, and we need to say, you know what, Lord, I can't live this way. You don't call me to. I need to live a love that's self-sacrificing, that gives freely, that seeks others before it seeks myself. Because, brothers and sisters, we have to end with this because what do you really have to boast of anyway? Right? We're just nothing but fallen, sinful creatures that the Lord has saved miraculously by grace alone. The only thing any of us really deserve is death, and yet, isn't it funny we think so highly of ourselves sometimes? It's foolish. What have I truly actually accomplished on my own in this life? Nothing. Apart from Christ, I have accomplished nothing. Literally, and I mean that very literally. The only thing that I am going to be able to present before God when I stand before Him as judgment is anything and everything that I've done through the power of the Holy Spirit for His kingdom. Anything else that I've done that is earthly, that is an earthly treasure, it's all going to burn up. But all my heavenly treasures, I didn't even do them anyway. God did them through me, through the power of the Holy Spirit. I don't have anything to boast about anyways, and neither do you. And yet we do so often. And of course, the greatest thing that God gave us is salvation, and that was completely by God's doing. You are here this morning, saved and redeemed completely by God's doing. Amen? Amen. By God's grace, you are saved. By God's grace, you are saved. And church, the sooner we realize that we are no better than the person sitting next to us, everybody's life in this church will be a whole lot better. As soon as you can look around and truly say that, I don't think of myself more highly than anybody here. All of us will be better off. And so that's why agape is selfless. It is self-sacrificing. Final question, and then we're going to close in prayer. Are you? Let's pray.